Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 253 of the Cognitive Podcast. Woohoo! I say that because if you look at the show notes, you will see pictures at the top from the Be the Light 5K. These were really lousy. Usually the race pictures are a much higher resolution than these, so I am a bit disappointed. Still, there I am, gloriously pounding my way towards the finish line with a big happy grin on my face, because once in a lifetime this happens. I'm coming towards the finish line and I'm utterly by myself, and there is the photographer going clickety clackety clickety click click click, and he saw me coming and we grinned at each other and I started to ham, but there I am. And the other one in a million thing, I actually look like I'm running. In so many running pictures, it's really weird. You come out with both your feet on the ground and you look like you're just trying to look exciting while walking, you know. There's also the beginning of the race picture. I want you to see that because you can see we start out at sunset and we finish in full darkness. And that's because I'm slow. But even so, no, actually I think everybody does, that they started out right at the last glow, as you can see on the horizon there. Anyway, that's why I'm feeling so peppy, because I'm looking at myself being peppy. In the warm thanks department, I want to thank Lefty Rebel Knitter and Loretta 1031, and I will come back to that when we get down to, in just a second, CFR 11. Reed Knit Snark writes, for the apocalypse meme that I posted last week, I prefer the term, quote, sewist, close quote, because you can't confuse it with plumbing. And also, they go on to say, it's not gender specific. Good point. Good point. I prefer seamstress because, well, I don't. Actually, I don't have a strong enough preference. And I do think Reed Knit Snark is making a good point. I do feel the role of women in creation this way, particularly in very vital home skills, has been historically overlooked. And so I have to admit I have a certain bias, let's put it that way, towards seamstress. But Reed Knit Snark is making an excellent point. I'm hoping we've outgrown more gender-specific stuff at this time in our development, but, you know, there are moments for gender and moments for lack of specificity. So 10 points there. I kind of agree with you, to be honest. Chrissa has some really good rethinking of fasting in her comment, which is based on Michael Mosley's book, Fast 800. And I don't want to go into it too much for the simple reason I haven't read Michael Mosley's book. From what I gather from Chris's comment, Mosley is going with the idea of 800 calories as being a good fast. I wouldn't argue with that, but I also wouldn't agree with it. However, there are some important caveats about this. First off, I use carbs, grams of carbs, instead of calories, because calorie burning is a very vexed question in nutrition. Calories are based on if I burn something in a flame in my lab, how does that work? How much caloric heat does it take? That's a little bit shaky because the body does not burn things the same way a flame in a lab does. We don't have open flames in our body, to put it simply. However, I have to say in favor of this a few things. First, I'm broken. Chris is not. In other words, I'm diabetic. As far as, I don't know if Chris is diabetic, but I have no reason to believe she is. Okay, and so the things I am doing are based on my having a serious chronic health issue. And that's nice, but what about the rest of you? And I think that's really where Chris's comment has great strength. And also, she points out Mosley does produce the science. So I'm talking at a bit of a disadvantage because I haven't read Mosley's book. So the difference, I think, in our take, in my take and Mosley's take, is this thing about I'm not using calories, I'm using carb, grams of carb. However, having said that, when I fast, I usually come in at about 800 calories if I do a 16-hour fast every day. The 8 hours when I'm eating, when I'm getting 20 grams of carb or less. That does tend to translate into about 800 calories. I have noticed this over time. So I respect Mosley's point and Chris's point. The other thing that comes across is it is much easier when you're using apps to measure your nutrition. It is much easier to go by calories. That not all food producers are measuring grams of carb accurately. They will talk about net carb versus total carb. Because if you eat something with high fiber, fiber is carb. But it is not the same as glucose. Okay, so when you talk about net carb, you're usually talking about how much glucose-based carb is in the food. However, some things that do not have glucose-based carb still raise my blood sugar level because I am broken. Did I mention that? I'm a diabetic. So, the going by 800 calories to me, without knowing Mosley's logic, does sound intuitively fine to me. In terms of carb, I think I haven't done this in years, but I believe a single serving of pasta is like 400 calories. So while Mosley's article sounds like it, or book, sounds like it would let me eat carb, not a whole lot. So if you're going with 800 calories as a fast, you're certainly going to be limiting your carb. So again, I think you have to go read Mosley's book and you pay your money and you take your choice. Because to me, it sounds like they're coming out pretty close to the same. Chris is fasting for shorter periods than me. I think she said she's using 36 hours. And she says she kicks into ketosis after 24. Yeah, I think there is a serious age difference between us, and Chris may be physically healthier and stronger than I am, so I'm willing to buy that. When do I kick into ketosis? I'm in ketosis a lot of the time because I'm keto. So, I eat very low carb all the time, as opposed to just doing the occasional fast or the once a week fast. So, this gets down to comparing apples and oranges again because I'm broke. I have this serious health problem. So I think what I would come out with here is I really have to sit down and read Mosley's book. It sounds like a great recommendation. And Chris sounds like she's got a really nice system going. So I gave the link in the show notes to her comment because I really do think it's worth the reading and the consideration. I wish I knew more than I know in terms of commenting on it. I'm also assuming, and I might be getting this wrong, that Mosley is going into this saying 800 calorie fast, but talking to people who do eat carbs at a more normal, culturally normal rate. I have no idea. I believe Chris is in Australia. I have no idea how many carbs a day the Aussies are eating. The Americans are eating a ridiculous amount. And just based on that, the fast 800 logic is going to make sense because Americans need to pull in on how much processed food and carb-heavy food we're eating. Okay, meanwhile, I want to continue to thank the people who will be joining me at CFR. I say joining us because I'm including Loretta 1031 on that one. CFR, as I record this on October 1st, is 10 days away. And I have now moved from, oh gosh, is this going to work, into I am insanely happy about it. I can't wait to do it. And I'm going to come back to it in just a second, but I also want to remember to thank my communities on Finch, on Reddit, on the ground in the SCV and the AV, and most important of all, in my listener group. You can see my two burps in Finch. They are in Thailand together in that picture, but if you're a Finch fan, it's kind of interesting. They're trying an experiment with a programmed adventure starting today I think it's called Midnight Mansion, where it's a Halloween-themed adventure. And it's fun, and it's innovative for Finch and interesting. So if you're into the Halloween thing, you can opt out of it. But if you're into the Halloween thing, this is pretty groovy looking. So I'm just saying there'll probably be a Midnight Mansion picture next week. In the meantime, let's get on to CFR. All the information is right there under the link. Now, here's the exciting thing. We have a low enrollment this year. I think there's about 15 of us. And I invited the vendors back, and I said to them, we're not reserving a space for you guys. You can do it right out of your room. Well, I was very worried because the spirit of CFR is we support our indie vendors. We founded CFR in the big economic crash of 2009 as a logic of supporting local vendors and local knitting groups without paying a lot of money for the event. Well, we're really living up to that now because we still have 2 vendors. And I was just, first of all, saying, like, we should not have to pay big money to get a famous person in to teach a class. That is one kind of knitting event, but it is not our kind. Our logic has always been our people have great skills and we can teach each other and keep our costs down and have this fun weekend together. So we used a cheap hotel and we used our local talent. Well, yes, we're still missing Mindy and Jamie and Hannah, but okay. Hannah moved out of state. She's married. And Mindy and Jamie, I'm not quite sure what's going on there. At any rate. So this has been the tradition. And this is why this year it's $10, because there isn't a reason to charge more. And I have to say, I'm not sure in the future if we continue to do CFR. I'm not sure I'll charge anything. But we'll see how this year works out. This year is highly experimental as CFRs go. I'm really looking forward to it because it's a very intimate group. So I contacted the vendors and said, I'm worried about this. You know, I know you guys have to make a profit. Are you sure you want to come up? To my surprise, oh, by the way, I'm not charging them to come. And they're not getting a space. So I said, you got to do it out of your hotel room. But if worse comes to worse, we can do it out of my room. I have to see how big a room I'm getting. I haven't checked in on that, and I really should call the hotel. Okay, I don't have any special thing going with the hotel, though, because we have such a low enrollment. The hotel's like, no, sorry, we're just a small group at the hotel. But there's a lot of available space. I'm hinting at Loretta 1031 if she's going to open her room. But I also should have an upgrade to a suite. I want to mention that. And I actually may call the hotel this weekend or this week and say, you know, hey guys, remember I should have a free upgrade to a suite. Let's do it now. All right, having said all that, to my surprise, they said we're coming. They said we're cool with that. And I thought, okay, it is solely on them. So that's the first exciting thing. The next exciting thing is I have to talk to our local crafting group. And I cannot remember what they call themselves here in the SCV. I don't see much of them, but they're a really nice group. They meet at a Starbucks. And I'm probably going to say to them, if you want to come on down. Because this is more for the vendors. Come in, you know, check out our vendors. We're happy that you do that. So I need to get in touch with them because we're getting real close now. And I've been putting them on hold for a while. So anyway, the idea is this is the intimate CFR. And there is a use for that $10 that people paid. And I just got the first part of that in today. Loretta 1031 is aware of it. I am not going to say what it is. But I thought I can either refund everybody's $10 or I can try to give everybody a certain bang for the buck. And I suddenly understood how to do that. What is the best way to do that? And I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's a pretty interesting thing. And I'm going to give you one hint. It's based on Loretta 1031 said, you know, Gemma, we all have great stashes at this point. And it's not like we need a lot of vendors. We really need good ideas on what to do with our giant stashes. Dr. Gemma to the rescue. That's all I'm going to say. In the meantime, I want to point out that we will still take you. If you want to sign up for this weekend, we'd love to have you. Meanwhile, Drew Caitlin is offering an embroidery and blackwork class. And Caitlin, if you're listening, please post some homework. You said there was going to be homework. We need this. Lefty Rebel Knitter is offering a class on Russian craft, and she has posted homework. It's in the information thread, and the link to it is in the show notes. You will see it in the section on CFR, And it says, Lefty Rebel Knitter published some homework, and it is a link. Okay, the other thing we got that I'm excited about, Loretta 1031 has a crocheting club for her primary school kids. And a lot of these kids are kind of economically disadvantaged. So she left a message talking about, can you donate things? And she talks about hooks and types of yarn. And she's the expert on this. I want to point out, we are going to have a table of yarn donations. Like, take any yarn you want, and you can trade yarn. If you want to trade yarn, that's good. And we're also doing mini skeins. If you want to bring mini skeins, that's good. What will happen to these things if Loretta doesn't want them, because Loretta's coming and she's local, they will, I'm guessing they're going to get boxed up and sent to our own Knitmore girls. That means you, Jasmine and Gigi. And I'll send it to them because Jasmine is also teaching yarn skills up at her school. And I think Jasmine's been a little more universal in the yarns she's accepting, if I remember correctly. The important thing here is, bring the yarns you don't want. Bring your oddball scraps, all that sort of thing. Keep in mind, we're going to have pop-up classes. I'm talking about teaching self-hypnosis. I'm just curious, like anything anybody wants me to teach in the line of what I do for a living, I'm really happy to do that. As long as we remember, I can't professionally obligate to you. In other words, I'm not going to give you professional advice. But I can just teach basic skills, whether it's give me the basic distress tolerant skills, Gemma, or it's can you teach us hypnosis or whatever. Happy to do either one of those, can teach meditation, but also can teach a bunch of other things. And so I would tell you, if you're attending, bring a good collection of hooks and needles, because I think this is pretty exciting. I think heaven only knows what's going to pop up, and your reward for your $10 is really going to relate to, please bring a good selection of hooks and needles. We're going to try to vary this and make it exciting. Now, it is a normal function of CFR that we work on a group project, like we pick one free pattern and everybody kind of does it. And say no more. I was talking about the emotional support chickens for that, and those are paid patterns. However, you did pay $10. Hint, hint. Okay, so we shall see. The other thing I want to tell you, we have a small group. This is really cool because, you know, we have a small group. We can take it on the road if we need to. Like if someone says, how about if we do this? How about if we do that? Or there's this yarny thing in the area. I don't know of any offhand. But anyway, we can do that too. The sky is the limit. The only thing we know we're going to do, I can't wait to do these 2 classes. I have always wanted to take black work. And I don't know Russian graft. I've heard so many positive things about it. I've always meant to get around to it. So this is pretty, I promise you, Caitlin and Lefty Rebel Knitter, you're going to have me in your class. I'm excited. The other thing, Michael's up the road. And Michael's just opened a Pseudo Joanne's area in their store. I have to go see it. That's one of the projects for this weekend. But they have fabric, they're saying, and they have sewing supplies. So this is pretty exciting. Do we have a sewing machine coming to this? Not as far as I know. However, I will be popping up myself with a collection of chickens and a collection of amigurumi, mostly based on the Woobles. So anything goes, kids. Anything goes. We can have some really fun stuff. Also, I'm planning to bring a lot of stuffing. So if you want to try amigurumi and that's been holding you back, say no more, kids. We're going to have some stuffing. Pretty serious amounts of it. Having said all that, oh my gosh, it's 10 days away. Okay, what's on my hooks and needles, you may be wondering. Well, I finished the last of my emotional support chickens that I planned this summer back on my July 4th weekend. You may remember that when I went to Ventura for July 4th, I got fed up with finishing the whole body of the chicken, which I used to find complicated. Now I'm so used to it, it's easy. And this is, by the way, the chicken that comes from Knitting Tree's pattern, I'm going to say. Okay, and I found the bodies hard. And so you get through this big hard body, and then you've got to do this tummy patch, and you've got to do the wattle and the comb. And that was really annoying me. Now, the wattle and the comb, they each take 5 minutes to make. The tummy patch takes a little more work, but it's not very big, and it's not particularly hard. It's just increases and decreases. Okay, so I did 7 belly patches, and I meant to do 7 sets of wattles and combs. I did not do those, but I did the belly patches. So I had programmed myself for 7 more chickens. And I got stuck on the last chicken, which I thought of as the brown chicken, and I'm still calling her Brownie, I have to admit, because I couldn't find the belly. I found the belly last week, or about 10 days ago, and I got very excited. So there is the 7th chicken. So as I sit here, the original chicken, Karen, from the kit, from the knitting tree, is in my son's room because he was getting stressed about his college work, and he asked for a chicken. So I said, anyone you want, and he took Karen. The biggest, the pinkest, my personal favorite because she's named after my late friend. But as I sit here, I have a very wonderful crocheted chicken from a free pattern, that's Belle, and she was made out of beautiful, beautiful, super bulky yarn that was donated last year. Somebody left a full bag with 6 skeins. Now, it's super bulky, so that's not a lot, and it's not enough to make anything, I thought. Well, actually it was. You may remember, I crocheted a rug, mixing it with raw fiber, with a braid of raw fiber. And I also made Belle, the crocheted chicken. She is a free pattern. She's sitting here looking at me a little bit balefully. And then I have 7, of course, of the chickens that I made in my leftover sock yarn. I use the same size needles when I knit these as I would use for this yarn in any other project. So on socks, I use a 1.5 American needle, and on the chickens, I use that needle. Okay, so there you go, and there is Brownie sitting there not having a clever name. In progress, well, the stash toss. I lost my mind. I was at Little Knittery, and they had brought in some Malabrigo, and it was a dark salmon, and I love that color, and I bought a sweater's worth. And you can see my frustration as I realize I'm trying to get rid of yarn. I have more than enough sweaters worth, and there I am. There I am buying more. We'll see how that goes. I will be going through my stash to get rid of my oddballs, and I have a lot of yarn that can be donated. That is one of the realizations. I'm always saving my oddball skeins and saying, I could make something out of this, and it's true. I often will make an impulse pair of middies. Fingerless mitts are my personal favorite. Or, infinity scarves. Because you can make these things, and you can make them fast, and then you can donate them to a family shelter or a homeless shelter. They're always going to be welcome. But anyway, there's a picture of me looking horrified because I did it again. Meanwhile, I am working on the sleeves of the September sweater. And I'm working on it slowly, but I'm really enjoying it. They're a lot faster than the rest of the body was because they're relatively short. They're not set in. They're not up to the top of the shoulder. They really are starting for me about midway, in other words, drop shoulder, about midway down my upper arm. So they're going very fast. They're crocheted. And it only was 60 stitches to begin with, and I am letting them decrease because they are quite wide for my arms. So hopefully the September sweater is going to be the next big one to get done, and that will take close to 12 skeins out of my stash, which I am very much looking forward to. I've done a little bit of work on the Fiery Scallops shawl. This is the simple scallop shawl. This is one of those projects you got to get through those first 5 rows. They're short but deadly. They make a lot of sense if you look at the chart. If you know how to crochet from a chart, this is a very easy project. If you're using the instructions, and I always do because I forget how to use the charts, and then I get into it and I remember. If you're using the instructions, it's a little bit confusing. When you get to about row 6, you begin to see what's going on there. The Ragdoll Revitalization. As I sit here, Laura Jane is at my feet, and I keep looking at her. She's so clean. It is really astonishing what happens when you take apart a rag doll and you look at her component parts and you think in terms of, I can upgrade, upcycle, repair that. Right now, I have her hair sorted out. I've been spending time just kind of trimming her hair and figuring out what to do with it because it's very, very old. It's 40-year-old yarn, seriously, acrylic yarn. But it's looking a lot better. The bangs are now lying flat. Basically, once I freed up her hair, I took out all the stitches except that center seam that is too big to remove. And I just let her hair lie flat and I let its own weight drag it down. And that's done a lot of good. So Laura Jane is so darn clean right now, and I'm looking at her and enjoying her as we speak. I am very seriously considering just taking her clothes off and tracing her and making a pattern out of her, because she would be a great project to use up leftover fabric in so many ways. I did consider doing a ragdoll class for CFR 11. And I thought, well, to do that, how would I do it? And I'd have to take out, I have a lot of fabric I could use for it. It would work quite nicely. And I thought, well, there's a few issues. And one issue is she is pale white in her skin tone. And she has black boots or trousers, as somebody called them. I can't think who, by the way, somebody thanked me, wrote a really nice message about thanks for this ragdoll revitalization. And I want to say it's Turbo Gal, but I could be wrong. But I appreciated that so much. Because I think this is the kind of skill that, since we're all makers, we could do a lot with. At any rate, the first issue, if I do it, is skin tone. That I have a pale white muslin. White muslin's easy to come by. Okay, and I have black muslin. But I was concerned about, that's a pretty white girl thing to do. We'll do a ragdoll class and every doll has white skin. I know this may be news to my generation, but I have to say white skin is not the human default, kids. And I just realized, that's going to be a little challenging. And I thought about, well, bring the boots and trousers part cut out. Everybody gets black boots. And then bring the pattern for the body, head, and arms and go to Michael's with the crowd. And then let everybody do that. And this could still happen. I mean, if I start getting messages from the attendees saying, no, let's have a go at that, I may try in the next 10 days to cut out some boots, really legs or trousers for everybody, and then say, okay, I'll make the pattern for her body, and we'll all go off to Michael's Friday night or something. Anything can happen, guys. This is a really open CFR. I'm very excited about the potential here. At any rate, Laura Jane's looking good. And so right now what I'm looking for is hairband solutions. And I've realized she had little rubber bands. If I want her to last another 40 years, that is to outlive me likely, or than not, I would have to use softer bands. And so I'm thinking just traditional hairbands. And then I'm thinking what to do for her ribbons. And the answer is, I may go to Claire's and just buy some cheap hair ornament and put it in her hair. There's no reason. You can really design her from the ground up. There's no reason not to do this. All right, having said all that, let's move on. I am not spinning. I should be spinning because I really want to put things away for the autumn. I want to finish the project I'm on, make the yarn and put it away for a few months because I have too many other projects I want to finish before I get on to my sweatering for the winter. And I hear those sweaters calling. I cannot tell you how close I have come to casting on for a sweater. I'm sure that's why I bought those skeins down at Little Knittery this week, because I so desperately want to cast on for a sweater. And this is ridiculous because I need to finish the sweater. I have two crocheted sweaters, a cardi and a pullover, and then a knitted sweater that need to be finished before I'm going to let myself start a new one, she said, because of that stash toss. All right, on to the strategy. Well, I'm still working on weight loss, and Mets, I've lost 5 pounds. I'm pretty happy about that. But, if I weigh myself in the middle of the day, it looks like I've lost 2 pounds. So I'm trying to get that under control, but I am using MyFitnessPal, not Chronometer. Chronometer I thought was good because it's better on the fasting. However, MyFitnessPal, since I've last looked at it, has introduced a fasting skill. It may have been there last time I was there and I wasn't paying attention. At any rate, so I'm using MyFitnessPal because I have more recipes entered into it, and it's doing about the same. One of the problems with MyFitnessPal was it would not let me limit my carbs to 20 or fewer. Now it does. Both apps, Chronometer and MyFitnessPal, are using net carbs. I'd rather use the entire carb. Even so, it's working out pretty well. So that's for that. Now, the other thing I want to talk about this week is giving into fear and what that does to you. We've had a pretty interesting political week in the U.S. And what I was thinking about, without going into the politics of it, is it's really been this interesting example of using fear. And when you're looking at things, there's an old theory. You're making decisions out of fear. You know, what am I afraid of? What am I defending myself from? Or you're making them out of love. What is in the best interest of everybody as fairly as I can do it? There are moments to use fear. Like when I put it that way, it sounds like, well, of course you'd want to make decisions out of love. No, there are moments where you are making decisions out of fear. I step into a crosswalk, a car is coming at me. Do I want to smile and do a gesture of blessing to the driver? That would be a decision out of love. Or do I want to get out of the crosswalk? That would be fear. Now, you can hear right away in that example the problem, that sometimes fear is love. That in other words, well, if I let myself get hit by the car in a loving way, if that makes any sense, isn't that kind of cold towards my family and loved ones who need me? Yeah. So the categories are not crystal clear, and thereby hangs a tale. But let's talk about just what fear does. Fear is meant to be there. We need fear. Fear does lead us to wise decisions. I'm walking down a trail, and this is very possible where I live. This probably sounds a little strange to you urbanites, but I'm walking down a trail out in Rose Canyon near Ojai, and my dog signals that there is a mountain lion. Oh yes, she used to be able to do that. That was Tally the Wonder Shepherd, and this did happen. And, you know, I could say, no, Tally, no. We have another half mile to go, which I did say for all of about 30 seconds before I realized Tally was fearless, and if Tally tells you she's scared, you probably want to take that seriously, because Tally would have died, she has since passed on. She would have died to defend me, but I really didn't want that scenario. So I gave into the fear, and that was probably a good idea. We could hear something, by the end of the hike, I could hear us being followed. And in that region, it was more likely to be a mountain lion because it was sunset, could have been a bear. Either way, not something I want to do. So fear has a purpose. And I don't want to say you should never have fear. But you have to be careful when you're making decisions on large issues and you're basing it on fear. What does fear actually do to the body? Let's go there. Well, fear, of course, leads to fight or flight. So it stimulates your body to go into hyperdrive. You're pumping adrenaline and the other corticosteroids. And as I've said many times here, that actually deteriorates your cardiovascular system. So over the long run, if you're always operating in fear, you're basically going to have a heart attack or a stroke. Now, we get a lot of time for this as humans. We can do this, from what I can tell. I'm going on Robert Sapolsky's research here out of Stanford. We can do this for about 30 years, give or take, you know, a few years, because it depends on how much fear, how intensely, how often during the day. And, you know, if you graduated with me from the University of Pennsylvania and you went to work on the floor of the stock market, you were a nice experiment for me. I'm very sorry, because you're also dead. That I watched the obituaries in Penn's alumni magazine and began to notice all these people I knew who took on extremely high stress jobs like that died in their 50s. They died rich, not that they got to enjoy it. Okay? So that's the problem. That if you're going to live in a fear state, you're going to kill yourself. So instead of fear, we talk about, what do I do instead? I have a plan. And when I have a plan should be very specific. Here's what I'm going to do. Here is when and how I will do it. Why is that so important? Well, let's say I'm making a plan in the middle of the night. I'm sleepless with anxiety. So I get up, I pull out my worry workbook. If you're listening to me routinely, you know what that is. I write down my concerns. I start to make a plan. All right, very few plans can be enacted at 2 a.m. in my life. So part of making a plan is learning to say to yourself, I have made a plan. I can stop thinking about this. And that manages the fear. Because not every plan can be enacted immediately. So basically, if you are afraid, by my logic, you're in one of two states. I am acting on the plan I have made, or I am waiting until I get the opportunity to act on the plan I have made. This is how we work out fear. So when you're listening to a community leader and they're saying, we have this terrible problem, we have this terrible problem, and you say, okay, that's fair. What is your plan? And they don't give you a plan, or they don't give you a specific, coherent, detailed plan. There are rambling, idiotic plans out there that are available. You know, I mean, look, you can say, Gemma, what do you want to do about that mountain lion following you in the canyon? I can make a plan. I will stand in the trail and say, bugga, 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 I am a dangerous mountain lion. That may work. But I think a more reliable plan would be, I am going to quickly and quietly work my way to the exit from this canyon. And if I meet the mountain lion, I will probably count on the German Shepherd to defend me while I run like a scared rabbit. Okay? Or whatever. But I don't think the booga booga plan is going to work real well unless I really am out of every other option. And the booga booga plan is not particularly specific. You know, and it also allows me to get into more danger, so I'll just keep walking up the canyon, further and further into the canyon, further and further into risk, because I can do booga booga. That's not very comforting. Okay, so you have to have a plan, and it has to be a realistic plan. And this is how I would recommend evaluating other people's claims. So if somebody is appealing to your fear, that might be perfectly reasonable. However, that's not what you should be listening to, because all that will do is hike up your corticosteroid production and kill you. You're listening for, okay, if I think your fear is realistic, what is your realistic and completely logically inactable plan? That's where it matters. So the idea here is when you're listening to any message, political or otherwise, and you feel your fear ratcheting up, that is a warning signal. You cannot continue in that place because it will kill you. The older you are, the more critical this is. Now, this leads to one other thing. In elderly people, if I recall correctly, strong emotions live in the limbic system, in the core of the brain. And one of the sad things, as the brain deteriorates with age, we see increased paranoia pretty commonly. So this is an old joke in my generation. When we were younger, we would talk about old people. If you walked across their lawn, they were paranoid. They'd start screaming, get off my lawn, you're going to kill my lawn. You know, really, one person walking across your lawn, not going to destroy it. And we used to laugh at that kind of paranoia. And there was a joke that went, hey, kids, get off the lawn. Okay, it was like a catchphrase for a while back in the 80s and early 90s. You have to be very careful when you're talking to somebody and they're encouraging a fearful response. You do need to ask yourself that question. Is this a reasonable fear? And can there be another cause for the fear? I don't want to start ageism and say old people are like this. I'm old. I'm not particularly paranoid. But as people age, they feel more unsafe. They feel more defenseless. And yeah, I have to say I get hit up on a lot because I'm an old lady. People come up to me. They'll ignore all the men around me and come up to me. They'll ignore the younger women and try to, get me to give them things. Okay, fair enough. And so, there is a justifiable paranoia. People who seem helpless have more reason for this. But I want you to think about that too. When someone is promoting fear, you have to ask yourself, might they have a motivation that has nothing to do with this issue? Might it be about their health, their sense of helplessness? Might it even be about deterioration? Just to keep that in mind. But for the most part, I want you to think about, don't give in to the fear. Giving into fear is never going to work. It is never going to help you in any way. It makes you unable to plan, and it stresses your body, it destroys your sleep, and these things have a physiological cost that will catch up with you. Having said all that, so let's move on to Aw Shoot. It was a fun kind of a week, let me tell you. We got our pictures back from the Be Light race, as you can tell, And as I said, they're not really good quality resolution at all. It was really a disappointment. I'm not sure why that decision was made. For the cost of this race, they should have had a better quality picture. The photos are free. They do have finish line shots, but it's a little bit of a disappointment. Still, I am back to running again, and I'm enjoying it. And I was having trouble getting myself going again. Now, what is a little bit hidden on my calendar is CFR is coming up a week later. I have another race, the Jeepers Creepers race, and I am trying to think of costuming for that. But in the meantime, I have to get myself running for it. And I've sort of realized I've had a difficult running summer because of bashing my foot up in July. I should really be at about 4.5 miles by now, and I'm struggling to get myself back to 2 because of the heat wave that always hits us same time every year, mid-August. And it wasn't a particularly bad one this year, but that and the bashed up foot really kind of shot a hole in my summer. That's okay, because the best running time is frankly right now. It's beautiful out. I'm getting up. It's about 50 degrees in the morning. Once I get my gear on, it's about 55, and that's actually perfect running weather for running shorts and a t-shirt. Sure, you're a little cold on that warm-up walk. Yes, I do warm up for about 5 minutes before I run because I'm older. When I was younger, I could just run from cold. I can now if I don't mind having problems, but the reality is I do a whole lot better if I do a very brief stretching routine and just walk to get all the muscles moving. So at any rate, I am running again after walking. I'm not doing any wonderful distances, but I am enjoying it. And those be the light pics. For once, I actually look like I'm running in a running picture. Go figure. So you can see my calendar coming up. The Jeepers Creepers is the next one on October 19th. And if you go into my calendar, you will see an absolutely wonderful picture of the beloved sun. They always have this lighted tent near the finish line, but not at the finish line, in the Be the Light. And it's a great photo op, and my son lived up to it. He was running through it all by himself, and he was holding up his light wand and interacting with the lights hanging from the tent and having a great time. He's got a perfect smile on his face, which is lovely. He did a very nice photo op there, I must say. We both had good photo op days. So from there on, too, I have been adding races. I signed up for next year's Be the Light. I'm signed up for the Mardi Gras Madness, which I hadn't added to my calendar. I think that's in February. And my son is signed up for these as well. On to the fluffy books. Well, I finished The Enchanted Greenhouse. How can I say it? The British would say it's kind of twee. I don't know how to say it in American. It's okay. The ending is very delightful. I must give her credit. That last chapter harks back to the spell shop in a really nice, sentimental way. But it does get a little bit silly in the midsection. It's hard for me to get this excited over plants dying in a greenhouse, but she can do it. I just can't. Anyway, that led me on to another book by the wonderful, oh dear, her name got distorted here. I believe it's Sangu Mandana. I hope I'm getting the first name right because for some reason my computer saved it with a word sanguine instead of her first name. Anyway, I really like her. She wrote The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which I loved. I'm deeply enjoying The Enchanted Greenhouse. A major character is autistic, and there's a lot of discussion about, hey, what would happen if we just treated her like, a child with some unusual needs who can do just fine if we support her appropriately. Gotta love that. I'm hoping it will maintain that consistently through the book. But I have to say, I love this woman's writing style. She's very poetical. Her descriptions of the landscape are outstandingly beautiful. The plot is very sweet. It's just a good book. So this is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, and I'm enjoying it. Something I really like, well, I'm going to go back to my FitnessPal app because I really want to point out that my FitnessPal is trying to keep up with the competition. So they've improved their fasting section and their nutritional goals are more adjustable. It used to be I could not update the nutritional goals to include 20 grams of carb or less. It used to be, no, that does not work with some, I don't know whose guidelines for nutrition, where you have to have this many calories and that means at least this many carbs and that sort of thing. They've kind of outgrown that, which I'm enjoying. And I have to say, it's got pretty much everything I wanted to have, and it's very connected to food manufacturers' data. So you can do barcode scans and pretty much get what you need for this. So I like that a great deal. So I am using my FitnessPal app again, and I'm happy with it. I just realized I have not updated the back episodes on Proton, so hopefully by next week I will take us back and do episodes 1 to 50 of this new series. So forgive me if I have not updated there. Put a lid on it, nothing new. Blather. Well, I took the beloved son at his request last Saturday into LA because he really wanted to go to the Griffith Observatory. And we ended up having this really interesting transit day because he wanted to go towards the Griffith by a different route. I always take the train, Antelope Valley line, down to Glendale. Then I catch a bus into Los Feliz, and then on Vermont Avenue in Los Feliz, I catch the shuttle up the hill to the Griffith. My son wanted to take the train all the way down to LA Union and take the underground to the south end of the village strip of Los Feliz on Vermont. And you can do this. Which way takes longer? I would be hard-pressed to say. But it was an interesting experience. So you can see the interior of LA Union Station. That vaulted ceiling is in browns and golds and reds. It doesn't come through well in this picture, but I can never resist taking a picture of that. I happen to think LA Union's main hall is simply staggeringly beautiful. It's a lovely thing to have a public building where beauty is merged with function. And of course, when you're there, he can get pretzel bites, which make the whole place smell divine, but taste like glue. But these are Wetzel's pretzels. And we both got ourselves coffee at Starbucks. Then, of course, you can see us, gosh, I guess first we're sitting on the shuttle bus. I'm wearing a mask because the Griffith Observatory shuttle bus is crowded. So I tend to wear a mask on that. But you can see my son doing one of the best ever smiles he can do. He's got a fantastic smile, but he tends to mug a little bit, as 19-year-old guys will do. So there we are on the bus. And below that, you can see us on the underground. He is being rather grim and focused, whereas I am hamming, as you know I will. We got up to the observatory. We had a good time wandering around. This time we did the very bottom floor, which has this enormous photographic map of the galaxy. It is very worth seeing. It's record-setting in some way, and I'm sorry I can't remember why, but there is a very cool display on seismographs and their uses in Southern California. And at one point, you can make your own earthquake, and there's our earthquake. My son was really going for it there. And then we went down to Los Feliz, where I took him to my favorite sushi. And to my surprise, he said, I have never had a bento box, and I really want to try one. So there he is. He's having a barbecued beef and cucumber sushi roll bento box. And I had mine with grilled salmon and sashimi, just superb. Of course, fresh salad and a lump of rice. I did not eat my rice, but that was okay. He was very filled up by this. And so he really enjoyed his bento box. He's mugging a little bit there to show you how he loves it. Okay, and as we move on, you can see the usual community resources, the LGBTQIA, I think I don't have an I in there, plus lifelines, because remember, whether you're Christian or you're not, although people keep claiming this is a Christian nation, basically mature adults do not harm people who look or act differently than they do. So, we especially don't want them suiciding because they're different, because grown-ups don't let that happen, just saying. Meanwhile, you can also see the resource line from the USC, that is University of Southern California Law School students, who are defending people who go to immigration court so they can be legally documented and made citizens. And, of course, the ICE people try to interfere with that. So you can do that online. And USC, which is one of the major law schools in America, their law students are going to help you do that so you don't get picked up by ice for, obeying the law. Meanwhile, you can also see a collection of the books I've used and the resources I've used to knit and crochet. And you can also see information on the Ice Block app so you can find out where ice is attacking people in Southern California and avoid those areas. And there's also a statement of what your rights are. In the meantime, speaking of all this, you can see my calendar. You can see the calendar of Yarny events in the Santa Clarita Valley. And you can see my calendar, including my add-ons now, the Mardi Gras Madness on March 1st and Be the Light 2026 on September 26th of 2026. How's that for a lot of 26s? Minerva gets the last word. Minerva's last word, well, she says, when in doubt, hell raise. You can see her lying on my bedroom floor with a bottle of aspirin. Fortunately, it stayed sealed. Minerva is dieting. Her automatic feeder is now down to 1 feeding per day. It is fine. She is not really losing weight, but she is unhappy. She likes it when her bowl is full. And she is eating most of that feeding as far as I can tell. And the rest of the time she is jumping on me, waking me up in the morning, and if I don't get up, she gets on all the surfaces in the bedroom and knocks things off. She does it in my study. She claws whatever chair I'm sitting in to let me know that she wants me to come feed her. In short, Minerva has been hell-raising. Now you may wonder, why put up a picture of Minerva hell-raising? Well, Minerva is a sensible creature, and she would like you to know there is an appropriate time and place for hell-raising. It is important to me that Minerva's hell-raising is nonviolent, but she is trying to make herself seen by not doing any serious damage, but simply interacting with her environment in such a way that she does receive attention. So Minerva says, sometimes we all need to do a little hell-raising. Don't let it get violent by any means, but you can basically do what you need to do to awaken your community to its own needs. Because remember, as Minerva would like you to know, we are all part of a community. And when we take care of the community, we are protecting the individual and the individual's rights. Having said that, everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.